Welcome to City on a Hill Gaming, a tabletop RPG actual play podcast. To find out more, download episodes wherever you get podcasts, or visit us online at cityonahillgaming.com, or by sending us an email at cityonahillgaming@gmail.com. You can also support us on patreon.com/cityonahillgaming. We hope you enjoy our show. Welcome back to City on a Hill Gaming. I am I'm not your narrator tonight, I'm your Ryan. Hello. I am joined by your Cameron.
Hello, hello.
And we are here to talk Pathfinder. We're not playing Kingmaker tonight, but we are talking all things Pathfinder. Maybe first and second edition? I don't know. We'll get into the weeds, because Cameron is the person I know who knows actually probably more about Pathfinder than I do. But knows Pathfinder, and I think, am I comfortable saying knows more comfortably than they know 5e? Or at least knows it better than a lot of the people we know.
Negligibly, yeah, I would say negligibly different.
And I think that's a little uncommon in the space. Yeah. Like, the average person is a 5e person, so we're gonna talk Pathfinder today. For those who don't know Pathfinder, it is made by Paizo Publishing. It was originally created... They originally created first edition Pathfinder as sort of... If I remember correctly, it came out after 4th edition D&D by folks who just really weren't happy with where 4e was going, and so they took the open game license version of 3.5 and made it their own thing, and it became Pathfinder, which a lot of people call 3.7.5. I played Pathfinder back in like 2011 or 2012 for about a year and a half, and that was first edition, and I really liked first edition. This is going to sound like just one log ad for Paizo, and that's not intended to be the case.
I mean, like, if you're enjoying the system, like,
that's fair.
Like,
they are what I would consider to be the largest non-Wizards of the Coast publisher, probably, at least for the D20 style games. I don't think anyone's really bigger than Paizo at this point. They also make Starfinder, which is Pathfinder in space, and then now make Pathfinder 2nd edition. They've, I think, sunset first edition, and they now just exclusively make second edition content. And I think they're doing Starfinder 2e at some point.
Correct. Listeners will remember that was my mic check. One of the previous times was reading the announcement of Pathfinder 2e, which is going to be fully compatible, or Starfinder 2e, which is going to be fully compatible with Pathfinder 2e.
Which concerns me greatly, but it's probably not a bad thing from their standpoint. So if you played 3.5 D&D, you have a fairly good understanding of how first edition Pathfinder works. First edition Pathfinder simplifies and takes away a lot of the nonsense. Like, I don't think you can do the peasant railgun in Pathfinder like you could do in 3.5, that kind of thing. It takes out some of the more excessive crunch, but as Cameron often calls it, Mathfinder, which is a reasonable thing to call it. Because Paizo's...
That's like the meme, is that it's way more crunchy than people are used to.
Yeah, Paizo's baby is definitely... Because 5th edition, not very crunchy, relatively speaking.
Right, to its own fault, I would argue.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that with you at all. I think that's accurate. But it is... Pathfinder is also very much guilty of that on some level, which is fine. I actually prefer the math. I do like me some crunch and some knowing what my numbers do. But
like, I'll say from my perspective, I like it when things are explained, because that lets you know what to break.
Yes.
So like, like an example is like D&D. When do you first get an uncommon item as a player?
Like, I couldn't even tell you what quantifies as an uncommon item to be fair.
And so like, the general vibe is somewhere before 4th level, you should be getting your first set of uncommon items for your players. But there's no explanation of what is a good uncommon item to give. Like, what are you doing? Whereas Pathfinder sets much more, like, using air quotes, strict rules for when people would get stuff, which then lets you know, okay, this is about what I should be expecting of my players. There's a bit more structure there that you can choose to use or not.
Okay. So I've looked up what constitutes an uncommon item, and it's things like an immovable wand or a bag of holding. constitute
But it's
uncommon
also some
items in
like
5e.
crazy items.
Like, I don't consider Cloak of Protection similar to those. Like, that seems very good to me.
Yeah.
Or Boots of Elvenkind or something like that. Okay. Yeah, no, and I think there is a fair amount of vagary there. And so Pathfinder, and I should clarify for the audience, so the reason we are playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition is because I wanted to play Kingmaker. And we could either play Kingmaker in 1st Edition Pathfinder, or we could just, break the seal and play it in 2e. And I think 2e does some things very well. There are some things they do that I don't as much care for, but probably are correct.
Which is funny because I feel like from our previous discussions, the things that you don't care for are the things that I love the most.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. You and I take very different stances on some of this. I do like that things like initiative are not tied solely to your dexterity score or maybe a feat. I think that's interesting. I don't know that I'd have as much variance as they do, but I do like the idea of freeing that up for the listener in Pathfinder, and this is for 2nd Edition. Your perception in some cases may be tied to, I don't know why I said dexterity. That would be initiative. Well, actually, it applies to both, I think.
Well, yeah. Your dex is what your initiative is based on.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Your initiative can be based on different kinds of awareness, and your perception can be based on different kinds of awareness. It's not just this static statistic. And I do like that. I think that is an interesting change that is a bit underrated in my mind. There's some things they do that I think make the system less crunchy, which is good, but I also think overly complicated a little bit in the interest of being less crunchy, which is an interesting exchange, I guess. It's but they are also, to their credit, doing a lot of the things Wizards of the Coast is doing with D&D that are making it more accessible. Both from a gameplay perspective and a cultural one. And as long as they're doing those things, I'm fairly happy with that. Because I think that is something that for a long time was not a priority for game companies when it probably should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that. I mean, you and I are both Magic the Gathering players as well. And seeing that going to even the recent update where they're changing some of the creature types to be more inclusive and things like that, or some of the keywords and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I saw bits and pieces of it, and I don't always agree with it, but if they have a reason it's necessary, that's fine. Like, if it's coming from a good place, that's okay. I'm very much okay with that. Wizards has a history of banning certain cards, but not because they're necessarily broken. There are banned cards in Magic the Gathering that are actually bad. But that's because they are culturally inappropriate. And while I don't know that I necessarily think it's necessary, if it's a move they think is, I have no objection. If it's bothering someone, then that's the kind of thing I think should go. Because there are certainly some cards out there that are, when they were made 30 years ago, were probably not considered culturally inappropriate, but certainly are now. And that's a very reasonable adjustment to make.
Yeah, and I think that's... We're going down this rabbit hole now.
Yeah, I guess we are.
But
this is what happens.
Yeah, I think that's something that's very challenging because it kind of leads you to like the intention of like, oh, well, there's this card that has this specific look in the art. Oh, maybe that's one that we should have caught as not appropriate 30 years ago. And then there's things that are like, whether through lack of investigation or lack of awareness, like mistakes were made. Like, like even things that are like, that would be like insensitive, but would not be bad. So like one of the things that they brought up was Neon Dynasty for the Return of Kamigawa.
Sure.
They had messed up a bunch of the kimonos and people had to like when they actually brought in people that were more culturally aware, they had to redo a lot of the art.
Like subject matter experts. Okay.
Yeah. Actually like people that knew and so it's like, oh, well, that's a mistake. That's what I think many people would understand as, oh, you just didn't know.
Sure.
But there's also things that are like, maybe we shouldn't have like depictions of the KKK in our art. Like,
no, that would not be
that's something that should not have gone to print to begin with.
So there are some cards with certain tonal qualities like that, or Islamophobic
Mhm.
concepts in them that maybe not even intentionally are there, but are there, and you do have to make those adjustments. Absolutely. Um, where do you stand on 3-action economy in Pathfinder? So
I love it.
Pathfinder, basically, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you don't exceed 3 actions, unless something gives you more actions. That's
Mhm.
separate, but it's no longer a standard action and a bonus action and a move action. It's here's your 3. Do what you want with them as long as you stay within the numbers. I
Yeah,
find it interesting. I think it's mostly fine. I don't know that I understand fully how it breaks down when some things actually take more than one action. I find that a little convoluted, but I like the idea.
yeah, I love it. I hate the action economy in D&D.
Okay, fair enough.
And the more that I've played Pathfinder, like with City, the more I've realized how much I really don't like the action economy of D&D.
Okay, fair
Like
enough.
I hate the like what is your actual action versus what is a bonus action versus what is
What are things that
like
are
a
free
move
actions that you don't
action.
realize are,
Yeah.
or what
And it's
probably
stuff it's
should be a
like
free action and isn't?
exactly because it's like in D&D you can use your action to move again, like using
Sure.
like dash
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Um but you can't use your move action to take another action. So like it only
Well,
goes one way. And I
and
think that that is unintuitive.
if you use your standard action to move again, then you can no longer use a standard action. Where in
Right.
Pathfinder, you can take 2 moves and still use a standard action as long as it's only a 1-action thing. And that certainly
Right.
simplifies. I think that's probably a simplicity thing, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And at least from where we're at with the game of like, I mean, I've only played level 1 Pathfinder 2e.
Right.
So like there's that. But like at least from that perspective, I really like the 3-action economy because it's just very straightforward. Your stride is 1, your strike is 1. You can do multiple on every turn versus
Right.
D&D where it's like, okay, well, when do I get my second attack if I'm this class? When is it different from this other class? Like you can then even then it's you don't get a second action, you get a second when you attack twice. And so I feel like there's a sense in D&D 5e that is so many people are familiar with it. They've just kind of accepted that, oh, this is makes sense. But
Right.
I really feel like the 2-action economy or 3-action economy also like gives them the ability to power certain things because it's like, oh, you can do this, but it is
Sure.
going to take your whole turn. We're going to plan on this taking your full turn versus D&D where it's like there's not, at least as far as I'm aware, there's not an action or there's not really actions that take your real action and your movement and your bonus.
Not re-
So you're kind of always having to like juggle around what are you using these
I
for?
think there's the rare exception of like if you use your move action to do this and then make an attack, use your bonus action to also. But like that's very few and far between. There's rarely any incentive to bother with that.
Right. And there's stuff like charge that if you moved this many feet in a straight line when you attack, do this. But like
Right.
that's not really
The same.
the same.
No.
Like versus the 3-action economy that has again just kind of from like a general perspective, it gives you so much variation. And then it also gives you like, hey, here's this class feature. It gives you the ability to do this thing, but it takes 2 of your actions. So it's like, oh,
Right.
this is a really cool thing. Me as a playing Ezek as a Magus, like my spell strike is kind of where I want to be. And it takes 2 actions, but I kind of get 3 actions out of it because most of my spells are 2 actions on their own. And so it's
Oh, okay.
kind of saving me in action
Sure.
because like I'm casting my spell through my attack. So
You're getting the attack and something. You're getting a 1-action attack and something that takes 2 actions for 2 actions total.
for 2 actions total.
Okay. No, I like
And
that.
so like it's an interesting way or like from some of the other Pathfinder content that I watch, there's classes that have an ability to attack with 2 different weapons at once at their starting attack bonus. And
Right.
that might be 2 of their actions, but they get to take it at that higher level. And then if they do a third or their third action as an attack, then it's, oh, now you're at the full -10. But it kind of
Right.
gives you a way
But at
to
least the
work
second
around
one's
that system.
not at the -5.
Right. And I think that adds a lot of nuance to how the classes can work differently.
Right. And if you haven't,
Versus really, what's the difference between a barbarian and a fighter when it comes to how they attack? Not really anything.
not much, no.
But there's a meaningful difference here between me as a magus and if we were to have a monk or a fighter,
Right.
or even Greg playing Utsi as a rogue. The way that we attack is radically different because that can be built in around that 3 action economy.
Right. One, and for the listener, what Pathfinder 2E has chosen to do is that, if you have 3 actions, you can make 3 attacks with the understanding that the second attack comes at a negative or negative. Like you'll take your whatever your bonuses are and then make your roll and then subtract from it. And then if you make a third attack, it's an even higher penalty. So sure, you can do those things, and on occasion they will be successful, but predominantly they will still not be. But you at least have the option.
Right. And I feel like that's a lot more meaningful for like lower level characters.
Right.
I mean, like in our very first session, we had people taking all 3 attacks.
I want to say you and Ben and maybe Kim all did at different points.
I think I did 2. I don't remember if I ever did all 3.
Did 3.
But like
maybe Ben that was just repeatedly trying to.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. Like at level 1, it gives the designers a lot more to work with when you can build around that type of economy.
Oh, sure.
Versus,
absolutely.
I feel like D&D, as somebody that like, so I'm running 2 different groups through the Strixhaven D&D campaign.
Okay.
And versus a lot of stuff in that where like, I'm like, what am I doing with my bad guys? I'm blasting this one action. There's not a lot to think about.
No, very much so.
Like, but here having this variety for how do you want to do your characters? How do you want to move things around? And granted, my players are relatively low level. The highest group is level 4 right now. So they're by no means like in game. But I feel like that gives like a lot of options. And so like going to what you're saying there, it's like, so as Ezek, I have a +7 to hit on my first attack, then a +2 to hit on my third or my second attack, and then a -3 to hit on my third attack. But because that as a math, this is why like the math finder thing of like it gives you the structure. It then lets them break the structure. So like Ezek is using a great axe as his primary weapon. And so when I attack an enemy other than the first enemy I attacked, or other than the previous enemy I attacked, I get a +1 bonus to those attack rolls. So I can actually do a +7 against one enemy, a +3 against a second enemy, and then a +2 or -2 against a third enemy.
So negating
like I get that
some
bonus.
of those. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you that ability to work around the system in a way that's really cool. Versus just, hey, you're a fighter, you get 2 attacks.
Right.
So.
Well, and you're not going to get those 2 attacks till later on. And granted, look, +3 is not a crazy bonus to hit, but you're going to hit some percentage of the time with that.
Yeah.
And that's not unreasonable. I also like seeing, and I know Pathfinder's doing it, D&D's doing it. It was a big premise for the folks at Level Up for Level Up Advanced 5e, was doing more with exploration and doing more with not just always hitting things, making more of the other things. It almost reminds me in a way of Minecraft, because what Mojang and Microsoft have learned to do is add something and then come back 7 or 8 years later and make adjustments to it now that they've seen that it's not holding up its end anymore. Like every couple of years, Minecraft just updates something or adds something new. And I like seeing these groups give us more options, especially for us, for our purposes, having more flexibility to not just always be in combat and it be that or being super reliant on conversation roles or whatever being your significant options. I like them putting those out on purpose and giving us things we can do that are different and still entertaining and still give you guys plenty of room to plenty of decision-making opportunities. but not every one of those decisions being which way do I hit a thing.
Right. Right. And I mean, I know that you can have those types of campaigns, but like within other rule systems, of course, like,
Oh, sure, absolutely.
but like I like how a lot of that is built in. And I'm curious to how this is going to play out since we haven't really had the opportunity to do anything. But one of the things that like always annoyed me about D&D is oh, are you going to make a what's the actual are you going to do an intimidation check, or are you going to do a persuasion check? And it's just, those are your two ways of engaging with others.
Anger or smoothness.
Exactly. And it's just like, which one of these are you going to do? It's one of those. And so like Pathfinder has that built in as well with diplomacy versus intimidation. But at least from what I've seen, you also get stuff that like can be built in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of other ways to learn about the world or learn about others that are not just those two skills.
Well, and it takes the thing often players will ask to do, like, okay, I want you to make this kind of check. Okay, well, can I do this instead, or can I use this skill instead? Mm-hmm. And Pathfinder is making the effort to bake it into the system. Yep. Like, I want to make, I want my initiative or whatever to be based on something else. Okay, well, give me a reason and that's fine. Or I want my perception to be based on something else. Okay, give me a reason and we'll see what we can do with that. And I think that kind of flexibility is good. It gives you... And look, and I think to some extent you do have to be careful to build your characters a certain way to make them functional. But at the same time, if you build a very specific character, there are some things you want to be able to do, and this gives you a little more freedom to do them. And even if you're not specifically statistically ready for that, I guess, in some sense.
Yeah. And I think part of that, this is another one of the things that I really am enjoying about Pathfinder, is like at level 1, you're building the character you want to build.
Yeah, like, that's true.
That's one of the things that bothers me about the subclass system in D&D. So like the first D&D character that I played in like a long running campaign, I knew was going to be an Eldritch Knight. Okay. But like at level 1, like what am I doing with this intelligence? Like it just doesn't mean
yeah, okay.
Like, but I have to have it there because I know at 3rd level I'm going to take Eldritch Knight as my subclass.
Right.
Versus playing the Magus, it's like, okay, I'm here at level 1. I have what I want for my character versus having to wait for it to turn on.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I got you. Yeah. And no, that makes sense.
And I feel like that gives you a lot more opportunity to try to build the character in an impactful way from level 1. And you're not just like dumping stats because I'm going to never need this. Like you're going straight into the character that matters. And like, you'll get feats and you'll get other things that'll like evolve the character, of course. But like at level 1, it's way more likely that they're the character that you want them to be than they are at level 1 or than they are in D&D.
Even if they're a much lesser version of that character.
Yeah.
You have a clear picture. Clear idea of where you're headed. I like that. Okay. And you're right. You do get in that trap of, okay, I know this is what I want to do, but none of this is necessary right now. But if I don't put the points into it at build, I'm never going to be able to in a meaningful way. And yeah, that is definitely a complication of character building. What do you think of the Kingmaker concept? Not even so much as from the part we've played through, because a lot of what we've played is like you've called it like just kind of like that tutorial area, that warm up area. But what do you think of the idea of giving the party the opportunity to actually mechanically run a kingdom, and their stats matter to it, and the whole 9 yards?
Yeah. So we've talked about this in our normal episodes, but you and I have both played the Kingmaker, or a large amount of the Kingmaker.
Yes.
Game. And so I'm trying to actually like get to my account. I want to see how much. I want to say I've played like 80 hours of it.
Oh wow. And what he's referring to is there's a game called Pathfinder Kingmaker by Owlcat Games that is based on Paizo's Kingmaker campaign, but is an actual video game by way of, what would you call that, strategy? I guess role-playing game. Okay.
Yeah, it's a CRPG. So if people are playing Baldur's Gate 3, it's the same like style there.
Just from a top-down. Oh, I guess I guess Baldur's Gate 3 is also a top-down on some level.
Yeah, I've played almost 84 hours of it.
You've got way more time in it than I do. What do I have?
So,
well, I've got 14 and a half. That's more than I would have told you I had. And that's between me. That's actually me starting over the story partway through pretty early on because I was like, I hate what I've built. I'm just going to start over. But it does follow that same path. And the premise of Kingmaker is a unique one to most campaigns, I think. Yeah. So what do you think of just the general concept?
I'm really interested to see how it's going to actually play out with our characters. Like,
oh, specifically your group. Okay.
Well, I say our characters, but with PCs, I guess, for lack of a better word. So like when you're playing the game, you just say, hey, you're this person, you go into this spot, you're this role.
You're the warden, but you're the chief, whatever, you're the general, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. You can think of it purely mechanical of like, oh, you're the character with a high diplomacy. I'm going to put you into the diplomacy place.
Congratulations. The one with the highest charisma stat becomes king.
Yeah. It's like stuff like that versus I feel like with us actually playing it, like we're going to have a lot more opportunities for like, I know that this is probably what's mechanically best, but my character isn't going to want to do X, Y, Z.
And to be clear, I have not considered what'll happen when you guys do that. That'll be interesting.
I mean, like I said, and we're still a bit away from doing that.
Oh yeah.
But I really like that as a concept, and I like that you kind of get to like have characters that have like authority in the world.
Yes, very much so.
Like relatively, like we'll be important characters. We're not going to be like by any means world leaders early on. But
no.
I think that plays into a really cool fantasy space of like, we are running this thing, we are building this. How can we do that? And that's something that like when I'm wanting to like run a campaign or play in a game, like that's what I want to know. What makes this campaign unique? So one of the reasons that I like the Strixhaven D&D setting is because it actually like takes place over 4 years. So whereas a lot of D&D campaigns are like all of these events crammed into like a 1 year in game time. Like this is actually like, it's like an episodic narrative. And it's like, oh, who is here this week? These events happen and these are the characters that go through it. There's actual downtime. There's actual, like your characters can have friends outside of the party.
Okay.
You can also like one of my groups, they very quickly latched on that like all their characters are really good friends and like hang out together regularly. My other group, they've kind of formed separate groups where there's some characters that get along with others and
they have
other
cliques.
Characters that like, yeah. And it's kind of interesting because like you can role play that because, oh, the last time that we played was 3 months ago in game time. What have your characters been up to over these 3 months? And
okay.
Yeah. And so like then taking that to Kingmaker, again, this is different. We're going to be going and having to do things to like, oh, we're going to go have to fight trolls to defend the kingdom or whatever. But like, we're also putting that into this alternate like rule set around actually running things. And I think that's going to be really interesting as we try to keep our kingdom growing and surviving and however that structure is going to be built in. Like, I'm very interested to what that is going to look like.
It is interesting because Kingmaker does add that element of, okay, so you will still explore and you will still play a tabletop RPG, but I'm also going to need you to like manage your economy and make governmental decisions. And this is becoming, because I finally bothered to play EVE online for not a particularly long time, but I did actually put a decent number of hours into EVE. And for those who don't know EVE is often referred to by people who don't care for it as basically the video game equivalent of having a second job because you have to micromanage so much and it's so like heavily task dependent. And I don't want Kingmaker to become that, because you could easily get into a space where
Yeah.
we spent a whole 2-hour a 2-hour session with y'all just making kingdom decisions. And I don't know
Right.
that that's interesting radio.
Right. And I think that
So
that's
some
the
of
thing that
that's
we
going to
can
have
lean
to
on
happen
there.
off
Exactly. It's kind of like the
camera.
shopping episode of like, no one wants
Yeah,
to hear
yeah.
people shop for 2 hours.
No.
Like,
Heavens no.
and so like we can make some of those decisions on air, the rest off air, and we can leverage the technology that we have to kind of talk through and vote however we need to vote or
Right.
whatever that looks like.
Well, and you know, if we don't play for 6 weeks, but in that 6 weeks you guys make a moderate amount of kingdom decisions, the next time we come together for a session, we spend the first 5 minutes saying, since we played last, these are decisions they've made. This is what the kingdom looks like now. Because you have almost exclusive control, or at least you think you have almost exclusive control over how the kingdom is running. Like, you have a lot of responsibilities in maintenance. It's like it's almost like it's like SimCity and The Sims. Like, if you've ever played the not N64, was it Game Boy Advance Sims games called the Herbs, where you played an individual sim and like had jobs and relationships and the whole 9 yards, but also SimCity at the same time. So like, you guys are the characters, but you are also responsible for the overall world all at once. And I think that's very interesting. That leads to a lot of possibilities. And I really need to spend some time looking through the PDF I have for Kingmaker, because I'm used to six book Kingmaker. And the end of the first book is when you really ramp into that. But Kingmaker, as it is in second edition, is 11 chapters. And it's not till the end of the third chapter that we're going to get to that point of actual king making, so to speak. And so I think that's going to be, it's really interesting. There's some very interesting things we can hopefully do with this, and just make it interesting for the audience, and try and do something different. And I have a fondness for it, and my fondness is for the first edition version, but I think there's a lot of interesting things you get to do with this setting. And we don't normally do setting stuff.
Yeah.
That's not normally how we operate on City, but I want to do Kingmaker because Kingmaker's cool. And I haven't got to play Pathfinder in north of a decade. So why not play Pathfinder?
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking about doing something, I was pushing very hard for Pathfinder 2e. I'm very happy that it won, but that is what we chose to go with.
We looked at first edition, trying to convert to 5e, and playing second edition. We looked at all three, and I think this is the more correct way of handling it. It's the more modern way of handling it. Yeah,
and there's something to, and obviously, like there's always going to be people that are going to go back and play Pathfinder 1e, and that's great. Sure. That's the joy of print media, is that those options are there.
I'm doing it with my home group.
Yeah. And like, there's just something also that's fun and more interesting of like, what is the current thing? Like this is the, I say current thing, Pathfinder 2e has been out for quite a while, but like,
right.
What is we're playing the modern game. What is this? What's going on? And it's like, even once there's updates coming to Pathfinder 2e of kind of a 2e.5.
Okay, sure.
And kind of in response to the OGL stuff. They're kind of using that as an excuse to do some remakes.
Okay, I respect that.
And so even there's going to be the options of like, oh, these things, here is the new current system, but I mean, there's no reason you can't use the old stuff too.
Right.
So like, some of the classes are getting some relatively big changes, but like, there's no reason you have to play that version of the class. I think that can be part of the fun. But again, there's also, it's the same as like people that play, I played a play by post D&D game right after the Genie Warlock came out. And I was like after it came out in the Unearthed Arcana. And I'm like, I want to try this. This seems super cool. I have a really cool character concept for what this character could be. And it's like, there's something fun about that side of it as well. That's like, oh, this is probably going to get updated. This is going to get changed. But like, there's something very fun about like being at the forefront of that character or that class.
Right, right, and actually really getting to experience it firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're playing for long enough, moving through the changes as they come.
Yeah.
That is absolutely. I'm trying to find something now. There's a humble bundle that came up that has some Pathfinder stuff in it, and some Starfinder stuff in it, and it's tempting me.
Yeah, I picked up one of them, and it actually ended up having the Magus in it, which made me very happy.
Oh, nice. Okay, that works out nicely.
And so
I may have to come back to this. It's a Roll20 humble bundle, which is not something I know. That's something I knew happened. But that's cool. So yeah, Pathfinder, and Pathfinder is one. We're doing this weird thing on City where we're just kind of trying some different stuff, and Pathfinder is the closest we're getting currently to D&D, but I think it's sufficiently different to be sufficiently different because we want to do something different right now, and that's fine. And something you may hear, and I haven't sorted out how we're going to handle this because I only found out about it today. There's a one shot I want to run that's called We Be Four Goblins. So if you've never listened to there it is. My mind just went completely blank, and I was talking
like, I thought
to
you
them today.
Disconnected. I wasn't sure what happened.
No, that was my mind just blanking. If you've never listened to the Geek at Arms podcast, Bryan, Mike, and James, fantastic dudes. I think it's episode 57. I'll try and link it in the description. They actually replaced James for one episode with James' wife, Joy. And she talks about a Pathfinder one-shot she got to do at a con that's called We Be Four Goblins, where you basically play four... In my mind, it's like playing Rugrats, but as Pathfinder goblins. That's the energy I want to go into it with, is playing Rugrats, but as goblins. So we may try that at some point. I think there's some potentially interesting road to nonsense there. I do love a road to nonsense. It's kind of our thing here. What is something you want to see us explore? So you've played Pathfinder with us, but you have listened to a fair amount of Pathfinder through, was it Glass Cannon?
Yeah, Glass Cannon was really my introduction to the system. And then I've done a little bit of Starfinder via Starfinder Society.
Oh, I didn't know they had Society for Starfinder. That's cool. Okay. What is something you know that Pathfinder does that is different that you would like to see us play with? I guess is my question.
Ooh, I feel like in Pathfinder, there's a lot more structure around like modes of travel, for lack of a better word. And I think it can be difficult to make that fun, of course. But
Okay.
I there's a big section in Glass Cannon where they end up on a boat and they're going like down a river for a substantial like number of episodes.
Interesting. Okay.
And like because Pathfinder like builds in a lot of this, like there's a lot of rules for what happens if you fall off the boat, what happens if like you are like, how do your weapons work when you're underwater, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there that like, especially like if we're going to like be running a kingdom, like a fun side quest could be we go and fight some pirates and like we now have this boat to boat combat or something like that.
I don't know
how much of like that type of pirate battle type stuff would take like is in the rules, but like that, especially with the idea of Starfinder becoming playable in Pathfinder 2E, like it's very easy to reskin a spaceship as a boat and just like bring in like those rules, and you can just like bring it down if that's not something that's actually in Pathfinder, but
make some adjustments and go from there.
Yeah, it's very easy to like reskin something like that. And so like that's something that I would really like to see us do, and I'd be very interested like how that would work out for us. Work out in the sense of like there's a lot of new stuff there, and I feel like we as players would need to understand a bit more before we dove into something like that.
Oh yeah, before we get in too deep. Yes. And that, to be clear, we are, as much as we're talking about this now, we are very new to Pathfinder in general. Like, I'm running Pathfinder 2E without having played Pathfinder 2E. Cameron is my distinct fallback because he has listened to enough 2E to correct me when I do something stupid.
Right.
And
I'm like the Pathfinder expert of our group, and I have not played Pathfinder 2E prior to this podcast, like prior to us playing. So
and that's a very City on the Hill thing to be like, well, one person knows how it works. That's enough.
Yeah.
It's fine. We've never played it before. It doesn't matter. We'll be okay. And look, you always have flexibility at your gaming table to make adjustments and, play differently if you need to because something doesn't fit what you're interested in doing. We do it all the time here for a variety of reasons. And if one of those reasons is this really doesn't work for us as a campaign, we need to make an adjustment, or we just really don't get this part of the rules or it's not working for us, we can always work around that kind of thing. And I think that's fine. We have the flexibility here, and that's good. What's something you would like to see us do on City that isn't Pathfinder? Just in general. Something you'd like to see us play. Or tackle, even if it's not a game.
Yeah. With some people over in Checkpoint Church right now, I'm playing some of the Avatar game.
Okay, I've heard about this, yes.
And so we haven't like necessarily gotten very deep into it. But I'm enjoying it so far. I will say it's one of the with Pathfinder, I could not imagine playing this with a paper character sheet.
Okay, fair enough.
Whereas Avatar, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm playing it like with a PDF, and I'm like making notes there, and I kind of wish it was in paper. So like I'm probably going to end up going and printing stuff out so I can actually just like play it physically.
Okay, sure. This is from Magpie Games?
Yeah.
And this just came out this year, right?
I think like the official release was earlier in this year. I think it had been out in like, I'll say early access. That's the video game term, but like
this was like a Kickstarter.
I think you had been, yeah. I think that if you had kickstarted it, you had access to like PDFs ahead of time. I could be wrong there.
Very nice.
But I feel like official release was this year. But like there's so much room there, and I also love Avatar.
Right.
That came up in our council on the Hill. Of like, to me, when you say like family friendly media, that is what I go to is Avatar, which I feel like is different than how other people view family friendly media. But
and I think that's a very reasonable thing to call Avatar.
Yeah.
Not being,
and so like that's a like system that like, I'm interested in.
Okay, and that's definitely something we can look at. I do find that interesting. I'm not the biggest Avatar fan, but I know a lot of very big Avatar fans.
Yeah. And then another one is Lancer.
Which is a mech system, right?
Yeah, which is a mech. And so that's one that I picked up from one of the itch.io bundles.
Okay.
And so I've played it once. I think Greg played with me. I could be misremembering. I've run like a one shot of it. And so it's really interesting. It's a fun system. It kind of has this fun thing where like you have your character and then you also have your mech. And so you kind of have these like different ways your stats are based on mech versus in person or on foot.
Oh, versus, yeah. Out in mech versus out of mech.
Yeah. And so I think that's pretty cool. It's a fun system. A lot of it is also accessible for free. Like they have a super cool character builder. That like, I forget what it's called, but like that's just available online.
I've also found a very interesting app that runs outside their website that like lets you manage combat or content and encounters and create new pilots
compcon.com or compcon.app is the one that I'm thinking of.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And so like it gives you like this really cool abilities of like, and like I said, I've only run it as a one shot before, but it's a very fun system. If you're a Gundam fan, like it's like right up that alley. And there's a lot of really fun stuff that you can do in that system.
Okay. Now my question at that point would be, are you willing to volunteer to run it as a one shot?
I could run one shot of it at some point.
This is something we may come back to in the future. We may have to have this discussion.
I definitely have to like refamiliarize myself.
Oh, sure.
Before like making any sort of promises. But
I feel like we know, and combined, we know more than enough Gundam adjacent people that we could put something together for this.
Yeah.
Same for Avatar, actually.
Yeah. And like I said, one of the biggest benefits of like Lancer is that everything, like all of the building is available online. That's one of the nice things about Pathfinder as well, is like all of those features are built in or built for free or accessible for free versus like I can't go to D&D Beyond and just play an artificer.
No, a lot of that is locked.
Yeah. And so but for Pathfinder, even though I do have access to the Magus class via one of the PDFs, like the stance that they have taken with their content is that it's available to everyone and the lore is what's like locked behind. And so I think like that ability to play the game is something that I think it's Mastiff Press did a really good job with for Lancer as well.
From like an accessibility to contents perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I think that there's a lot there that I think is very, very beneficial that like doesn't necessarily work out as well for D&D.
Sure, there's a lot of complexity to access when it comes to financial access when it comes to D&D. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Okay, Cameron, thank you for joining me, sir. We've had a nice little discussion of all things Pathfinder, and more Kingmaker is coming. We had a complexity of schedule and health related conflicts come up, and so our regularly scheduled Kingmaker game will be differently regularly scheduled. But the party and their nonsense is not going anywhere as far as I am concerned. We will be back with more of the us and doing our Kingmaker thing. I think you guys were just about to step into a room covered in fire, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think that's next.
Good to know.
I believe it's a room of fire. And I'm hoping I have something in mind for this next session or section, should it work out, that I am very excited about, that half our audience won't care about, but is going to make me very happy to do in the moment. Ryan gets to use a voice he doesn't get to use most of the time. That's just not applicable in the average situation. And I really want to try this, and I'm hoping that works out. It's going to work out at some point. I've been threatening to do this for like a year across multiple campaigns, and it's never actually panned out to happen yet. But we're going to get there eventually. You're going to get to see a real weird side of Ryan, hopefully here soon.
Oh, I'm ready.
Bring it on. Let's do this. So hopefully we will make that happen shortly. If not, I may be able to forcibly cram it in somewhere else. I am not opposed to trying that. We also have something new coming to the show soon. We are workshopping a new campaign for the other group, the group that just finished Impulse Drive. We are workshopping something new for that is very different than what we normally do, but I think will be very enjoyable and very fluffy and fuzzy and friendly. So just our normal, but a little different. I think you guys will enjoy it. We also have, we're in the vague discussion about something Star Wars related, and I'm very excited about that as well. And I'm probably threatening to do 3 or 4 other things. There was something with superheroes, and I definitely threatened something with someone that was Old West based. And I use the word threat lightly. But I am
don't threaten me with a good time.
That's right. Oh, don't tempt me. We definitely have some stuff coming down for the rest of 2023 and into 2024. Maybe a Christmas special. I don't want to overpromise. We're discussing a Christmas special that I think you're going to enjoy if we can make it happen. We're going to make it happen at some point, but I'm hoping it's ready for Christmas. So, Cameron, where can the fine folks find you on the fine internet? The good side of the internet.
You can find me on Twitch, on twitch.tv/Cameron plus Deanna, as well as twitch.tv/OneGeek411. You can also find me as Humar Whittle all around the internet, like Threads, Instagram, Twitter, Discords, all that kind of stuff.
Go find him on Arena.
Yes, you also find me there on Arena. You can
also find him on Arena. Go find him on Arena.
Playing all the magic.
That's right. Maybe if we can work it out, something new on Arena soon. I'm trying to convince him and some other people we know to go on a journey with me that is absolutely a mistake, but I'm still going to try and convince them to do it. That's
We're
never
going on a
stopped me
journey
before.
like it's 2016.
Yeah, baby. It's going to be niche, but that's fine. That's never stopped us before. So, hey, cityonthehillgaming.com. If you want to come check out the content, the website is functional again. I am happy. I think I've had to say for several uploads that the website was not functional, but I believe it is fixed now. Ryan's learning about how website backends work, and I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, but it seems to be working right now, and actually better than it used to. So I'm happy. Thanks to our friends at Captivate.fm, because most of that comes from them. So, yeah. Oh, and cityonthehillgaming@gmail.com, and we're also on Threads, he said, without being certain that was true. But I'm pretty sure we're also on Threads, and Twitter, and Instagram, even though I only check it once every 6 months. But we're definitely on there. And most of the notifications I miss are actually from Cameron. Cameron or Jarrett are normally my missed notifications on Instagram. So follow us on all the places, links in all the descriptions. And we will be back soon, hopefully with Ezek being Ezek. Or as we call him now, is it Null Dad?
Yeah, Hyena Dad.
Hyena Dad, yes, because for some reason he's now the adult in the party.
Yeah. For some reason, the character with +2 intelligence and +1 charisma has become party dad.
Yep, you are the voice of reason. You are the most anti-dad joke campaign dad I've ever seen in my life, and I'm kind of here for it. It is the full control father who will make sure no one gets hurt.
Yes.
Because, boy, this party's inclined to some nonsense already.
Yeah, we have to make sure that the random leaf thing, the frog, the goblin, and
the frog who just wants to float down the water.
Yeah, I got to make sure all of them stay alive and
that's
herd them like cats towards the towards something, some semblance of
towards
safety.
the danger, because they keep just wandering off. So that's Cameron's adopted responsibility unintentionally is to be the good leading example and voice of reason. Which is not what you expected when you signed up to this campaign, I don't think. But it's where we've ended up. But that's okay. We're having a good time with it. So thank you so much for tuning in. Go check out Cameron plus Deanna and One Geek 411, especially their Taylor Swift stuff. They have a Taylor Swift tier list.
Yes, we Shanine and I did a full discography ranking of every Taylor Swift album.
Okay, respect.
We just did a supplement for 1989 Taylor's version, since that was not out when we did the ranking.
So. Did the original. Okay, fair enough. So go check that out if you are a big Taylor Swift fan, because the young lady has become very popular recently.
Mm-hmm. Even kind of a big deal.
More popular recently, I should say.
Yeah, she put football on the map.
I hate that sentence. She certainly put it on the front page of every news and media outlet nationwide recently, and more power to her. The NFL is very happy right now. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening. We will see you soon. Cameron, say bye.
Bye.
We'll see y'all later. Have a blessed day. Thanks for listening to City on the Hill Gaming. If you'd like to know more, find us online at cityonthehillgaming.com or by sending us an email at cityonthehillgaming@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at cityonthehillgame or find us online at patreon.com/cityonthehillgaming. Thanks as always to our Patreon backers, Grizzly Rich, JD, Bryan, Sir Lord Epicname, Andrew, Christina, and Tony. We really thank you guys for everything you do to support the show, and we truly appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.